Hello everyone. Here's a quick demo showing how to load software instruments, but specifically how you will load up a specific instrument in Logic not using its library. So here we have the course initial thing that appears whenever you start a new Logic project is it wants you to add a track. And of course we're talking about software instruments. Notice that if you don't see details, you can click on details and see that. And usually by default, Logic will show default patch. And if you have that chosen and you click create, it'll create an instrument. And in fact, Logic's default instrument is an electric piano. So it'll create electric piano plus probably some effects and probably some auxiliary channels as well. So for our purposes here, and what I usually start with anyway, is an empty channel strip. So we don't want to have anything assigned to it. We don't want the library to open up. We don't want to use that at all. So I'm going to click create. As you can see, it creates a track. And over on my channel strip, making sure that I have my inspector open. So over on my channel strip, I see that nothing is in there. It's completely empty because I said create an empty track. So to create an actual software instrument, I go down to where it says instrument within the channel strip, click on that, and I'll see a list of first most recently used type of instruments in this case. And then under the line, you'll see then, I'm going to scroll down a bit so we can see the whole menu. Then I'll see a bunch of the instruments, about 14 different instruments that come with Logic. So these are always going to be there. They come installed with Logic. Underneath that will be some utility things, which is really talking about, in this case, this Klopfgeist, or sorry, it's Klopfgeist, which is the metronome sound. So it's just some specific things there you don't have to worry about. And also Drum Machine Designer, which is a separate type of instrument, but it's all part of Logic. Underneath that, of course, is getting into the AU or audio units instruments. These are the third-party things. You can see I have lots of companies, plugins within this menu. We have a lot of these in the lab, but not all of them. But again, these are third-party things that were added. So we're talking about just using one of Logic's instruments. If I were to choose a Logic instrument, say for example, one of the oldest ones they have, the ESM, I select that and the window comes up. Now, unlike using the library where I might choose from categories and go through there, when I choose one of these sounds, I really don't know what instrument, like when I click synthesizer, I don't know which synthesizer is really creating these instruments. That's kind of a fast and dirty way to add sounds, but you also are kind of losing some control. Logic has these preset with effects and various things. So when you're loading up the instrument yourself, there are presets. So I could click on where it says factory default. I can click on that menu and I can choose from a small list of presets for this particular instrument. Some instruments have hundreds of presets. This one only has a few because it's really just kind of to give you a taste of the types of sounds that you could create. But there will also always be a default sound. You can also either bring up initialize setting or recall default. It'll bring up whatever the default setting is. If I click initialize setting, it actually did reset that default to be even more basic. Just a sawtooth waveform with the filter all the way open. And then of course I can shape that. Just like you did in the software intro to synthesis module. So that's how that would work, where most of the Logic presets you bring in, or sorry, Logic instruments you bring in will have presets that you can select from this menu. Just to show another one, and I could replace this instrument by going to the instrument slot, which is now filled in. I've got a power button to turn that off, just mutes it basically from the actual instrument. I can click right in the middle where it looks like 2 lines and 2 dots, and that will bring up the instrument again. Or I can click on the arrows right next to it on the right-hand side to change that instrument to something else. So this is good if you've already recorded a bunch of MIDI information. You just want to change the instrument. So again, I could choose any of these, like say the ES2, which came a little bit later in Logic's history, a much more complex synthesizer. But notice that same thing, I click on factory default, but now I see lots of choices. I have categories, and then it branches off to see other ones as well. If it's a Logic preset, or sorry, a Logic instrument, you can also use these 2 arrow buttons to kind of go through all of the presets instead of constantly clicking on this and choosing one. I can actually go into a preset sound, and then if I click to the right, it'll just show me the next one that was in the list. So very simple to add in Logic instruments. Notice that some of these are synthesizers. Some of these are things like a B3 organ. So it's not a synthesizer, but it's emulating an actual B3 organ where I've got these drawbars. I couldn't think of the word for it. Drawbars that I can pull to change the sound. So you can hear how the timbre is changing just like on a real organ if I was using that. But again, this is exactly like a synthesizer plugin that I can click up here and I can choose from a list of presets, or I can click the arrow buttons to go through that. If you're using your keyboard, or you want to do it even faster, your computer keyboard, it's the bracket keys, the hard bracket to the left or right, that's just to the right of the P key on the keyboard. That will also let you go advance through presets without having to click all the time. I find that very handy to do as well if I'm going through presets. So that's all there really is to it. If you're going to load in an actual instrument, then of course you just bring up, you choose the instrument. I'll choose another one here, like say the retro synth. So I can choose the instrument. I can then go through presets if I'd like. Again, categories here. I can choose a preset. And if I close that, it's still, of course, assigned to that. I can bring it up again if I want to. But once I've got that, then, of course, I can add on effects to change the sound as well. But I'm basically manually having to make the decisions instead of having Logic make the decisions for you. So that's it. The next demo will be about using third-party instruments, and then after that, there'll be one about using and assigning effects.